that amendment, again under the Blair years, is the single piece of legislation that at a stroke made millions and millions and millions of people in this country second-class citizens. I think that the relationship between politics and British Muslims first started being damaged by the Blair government. So it was long before the Conservative government that this first started. If you look at some of the language that was used around the war on terror, the Abu Hamza Amendment. I mean, so many of you will remember.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so you may remember a guy with a hook on his hand who used to hang out in East London called Abu Hamza. And he kind of became the kind of favourite extremist of the Daily Mail. By the way, most people in the Muslim community thought he worked for MI6, right? And avoided him like the plague. But anyway, he became this kind of beacon of Muslim extremism, and they were desperate under the Blair government to get rid of him, and they tried various things to try and get rid of him, and various legislation didn't allow them to do that. And in the end, because there is an international law means that you can't make somebody stateless, they brought forward an amendment which basically meant that if there was a probability of somebody having another citizenship, even if they did not have that citizenship, had no intention of ever taking up that citizenship, and there was no guarantee that if they applied for that citizenship they would be given it, you could still pretend that other country would give them citizenship, and therefore you could get rid of that person and you wouldn't be accused of making them stateless. So effectively it was a fight to the bottom to see which country would then be left carrying the baby, literally. And that amendment, again under the Blair years, is the single piece of legislation that at a stroke made millions and millions and millions of people in this country second-class citizens. It's what led to the Shamima Begum case. I mean, whether you think she's a sinner or a saint, she's our sinner or our saint. She was 15 years old. She went out. She had never lived anywhere else. She had never thought about taking up Bangladeshi citizenship. When it became apparent that she would be stripped of her citizenship, Bangladesh made it clear that her option to exercise her right to apply for citizenship, which by the way would have expired, I think, a few months after she was stripped, because it only lasted up to the age of 21, that even if she'd exercised that option would not have been granted, and that Bangladesh would not have given her citizenship. But just on this, fantasy version of what she might have been able to apply for, we stripped her of her citizenship. The reality of that decision, and I'll make it personal, is this. My child, who, as I said, is now serving in our armed forces, who is now 5th generation British. Some would say she's kind of 10th, 20th generation British, because before that we were all British in British India. But she's now in country 5th generation British. If she goes out and commits an offence, and it doesn't have to be a terror offence, by the way, it could be a financial offence, and Peter's child goes out and commits exactly the same offence, my child, 5 generations on, can be stripped of their citizenship. Because through a heritage issue, because of the great-great-great-grandfather's entitlement to a potential citizenship in South Asia, she could potentially, probably, be entitled to a citizenship somewhere in South Asia. That is enough. That makes her, and millions and millions and millions like her, second-class citizens. And when you end up with political parties who start talking about the mass deportation of Muslims, the mass stripping of citizenship from Muslims, we have the legislation in place to make that a reality.